The first pillar is the higher school learner support program, whereby in grade 9 we help you identify subjects that are in line with areas of studies or programs you intend to pursue when you reach institutions of higher learning. That's absolutely critical because of two reasons. One is that you find 12 learners doing maths literacy trying to be a doctor the following year, which is a huge disaster for them. But most importantly, a whole lot of funding opportunities are aligned to specific fields of study. So if you intend to attract funding, there are certain programs that you would have to go into, and there are certain subjects you would have to identify to meet two requirements. When you access institutions of higher learning today, you have to meet one, the points requirements and the subject requirements. But both are dependent on each other. You don't meet the other one and fail on the other one and still be able to make it. For example, law, which is probably a good example, requires a lot of English, high mark in English. But you find that most of the students think maths and science is so difficult, so they pay so much attention on maths and science and get an A in maths and an A in science and then go get 40% in English, but they're trying to be a lawyer, so they don't make it because they don't meet the requirements. But if law requires 38 points and you get 45 points but less than 60% in English, you don't make it into the law program. So so those are the two things that most learners are unaware of. So we try our level best to guide them to make sure that they are completely aware of how to meet those requirements. But secondly, the idea of filling the application form, and I'm going to link this to higher education opportunities, in particular NSFAS, because I served in a financial aid committee at VETS as well, and 50% of the application forms which are rejected on two grounds. One, they are not completed appropriately. Two, they are not accompanied by the right documentation. The whole parent factor that I was emphasizing. Because without that, there is no way of telling who qualifies and who doesn't. So the second pillar, which is the facilitation of admission, adds into that first pillar, where we now help you to accurately fill in your bursary and your university or FET application form and submit on time. In our case, there's an application fee attached to applying. So we know that most of the families are reluctant to part ways with 400 rand. That does not mean guaranteed admission into a campus. So they, or either because they're not convinced or they just don't have it. That way at VETS, it's been a great relationship. We managed to get the registrar to waive the application fee of our top 100. Now our top 100 is because we reach out to over 12,000 learners in a year. So, but our top 100 is top 10s of our top schools. It's not necessarily top 100 as in a group. And so they waive their application fee, and then we try and fundraise application fees for the other group moving forward. Because after our intervention in some schools, number 30 in June goes into number top 5. So the performance of grade 11 is not completely accurate a window to kind of assess one's potential moving forward, which is highly unfortunate because most universities now reject you based on your grade 11 marks. And unfortunately, I can't be too hostile towards the university because I need them, but to a large extent I differ with them fundamentally in their admission process. Now, we help you fill the form. Some of them we physically bring them to a university and hand them over ourselves, largely with the post office strike, for example. Most forms will not reach university. Nobody's talking about it because South Africa has a responsive approach to crisis. In January, there's going to be a war at institutions of higher learning because students will be saying, I submitted my form, and the university will be saying, I did not receive it. But that's, and indeed, both of them will be correct. No one will be lying in that account. But there's these soft areas that we don't pay much attention to, and they're the ones that are so critical in this whole concept of accessing institute or post-schooling opportunities, to be more precise. Because there's a particular emphasis on vocational and artisan education at Thusanani, and we're actually recruiting more of our volunteers from graduates of FETs, because when we go to rural schools and say, no, you know what, university is not the only option. You say, yeah, you can say that, but you went there yourself. So how do you go to university and then come to us and say, no, it's not the only route. So we're creating a network of successful alumni of FET colleges to demonstrate to them that they're actually ministers and DGs who went to FETs. And that field of study that you're studying does not necessarily link up to what you possibly do post completion of your higher education. But that's a topic, a whole topic on its own. Now, the value add there is accuracy and on time in terms of applying to various funding opportunities and universities in particular. But we go into the tech. How much time do I have? Because I struggle to get to the point most of this.
What did we say? We said up to 40. So we've got about 10, 15.
So I have 15. Okay, that's perfect. Well, if I have 15, I'll emphasize this point. The technical details of the application form, so you are so critical in whether you make it or not. So most of our kids make it not because maybe they are smarter than others, but because they are very cautious of those things. So a typical unguided young person who wants to be an engineer will say, or a doctor, let's use a doctor then an engineer and then move on. A doctor will say, I want to do medicine and then I want to do Bachelor of Health Science. And that's the first and second option, and then maybe engineering in case I don't get into medical school. And then the problem there is that higher medical school is so competitive that it requires more or less, your Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery requires more or less the same points as the Bachelor of Health Science, which would mean that if you don't make it into your first option, you won't make it into any of them. That's on the health science. Engineering guys are even worse. They say, okay, first choice chemical engineering, second choice electrical, third choice mechanical. They are in the same faculties, then they require more or less the same points and the same subject requirements. So if you don't make it, you don't make it into any of them. A Thusanani guy says BSc, he would say medicine first choice, second choice BSc, third choice dentistry. There's a gap of about 4 to 5 points between those programs. But BSc, most doctors anyway go through the BSc stream. Upon completion of BSc, jump into second or third year of medicine depending on their points and are able to complete their studies in time. So failure to make it into medical school is not the end of the world for them. And you find people really angry at themselves because they didn't get into a highly competitive medical school because they're not aware of the other streams or the routes through which they can get to where they intend to get to. Our typical guy who wants to who is into engineering, Masutha at UJ, for example, will say, civil engineering degree, a BSc second choice, national diploma in civil engineering third choice. There's still a gap of about 5 or 3 points in between. And anyway, most of the guys, the stats are saying the guys who go through a diploma program are most likely to make it than the guys who go through the mainstream. And anyway, 3 years later, they add 1 more year and it's a Bachelor of Technology in Civil Engineering. And then the likelihood of success. So those technical things, shady ways in which you kind of get our kids to think of and really understand their abilities before they get into the program. Okay, that's enough waste of your time on those technical details. Another important element of Thusanani Foundation is the continuous on-campus support program. And this is particularly informed by my experience in the CRC, but also the general, the statistic that I read out on NSFAS report, review committee report. We are trying to design, we are still working on it, but currently this pillar bridges the experiential, the social, and the academic gap between a rural high school or a mild school and an institution of higher learning. The experiential in that adapting to a campus environment which is less supportive than a high school, socially in that your emotional support and so on. Thirdly, academically, this is what we do. Third year psychology guys, mentors, first year psychology guys. Our third year mentors / tutors meet with the lecturer of the topic upon completion of that topic. Maybe to say this more clearly, there are 7 topics in psychology, for example. First one is the brain or behavioral patterns. After the brain is done, the lecturer of the brain, in partnership with the School of Human and Community Development, we have an understanding that that lecturer, upon completion of his topic, will brief our mentors / tutors on what areas of that topic the student seems to be struggling with the most. And that way, when our mentors come back, they don't re-tutor, they're already tutors at university, they don't re-lecture or anything, but they focus on the problem areas and then deal with anything else non-academic. When our kids go back in, they're able to excel in what maybe most are struggling with because they've been able to go through that program. And the same applies to any other program, but we're trying to win more schools to buy into this model. And then that way, we will then, be able to help, our mentors will be able to help them with assignments. I mean, some people fail assignments not because they don't understand the topic, but they don't know how to reference and how to write paragraphs, all those things that you drop out at first year and you realize later on, but by that time you have lost your space and your scholarship program. Finally, our mentors are subjected to an entrepreneurship and leadership development program. Not only do they graduate with community work experience equivalent to the duration of their programs, but they are able to explore something beyond their field of study when they complete. So they are very happy with that because most graduates say they are unemployed, but that's because they type their CV a day after their graduation ceremony. I don't know, I think I must emphasize that, but most graduates who are unemployed today is because they type their CV a day after their graduation ceremony. So they wait until they complete their studies and then they start looking for a job. Whereas you should start channeling your ambitions and your plans at second year level. You start doing free work. If you want to work in telecommunications, go to MTN and offer them to work to them for free or volunteer for free, or I don't know, wear their t-shirt and advertise them, whatever it is. Exposure to the industry, but also maturity in terms of transformation from being a student to being either an employee or an entrepreneur moving forward. That's really the point of that program at the bottom.